Mark, we are recording.
Excellent.
Yes.
Hi.
Hello. Hello. I took the Gallup strengths. So my top five themes were communication, connectedness, strategic, learner, and input. So if I go through the first one, communication, it says people who are especially talented in communication theme generally find it easy to put their thoughts into words. They are good conversationalists and presenters. Connectedness says people who are especially talented in the connectedness theme have faith in the links between all things. They believe there are few coincidences and that almost every event has a reason.
Like you can extrapolate a reason from it, or like the universe is some sort of sentient thing that actually is orchestrating things for you.
It might be a combination of both. I like honestly, the way I'm reading that, it's almost like the concept of having a reason is something that I feel that I'm connected to, but
Okay.
it also means that I will look for one if I don't see one immediately.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It seems like a pretty big distinction that could greatly influence what you do, how you do it. Because one is an active thing, right? Like you're looking for meaning, like, okay, well, I have to do this job that I don't like, or I have to do this task I don't want to do. But maybe from that, I can learn whatever, how to deal with a situation I'm not a fan of, or how to get along, how to resolve situations I'm not fond of because I have to work with this person I don't like working with, or whatever it is. Whereas the other one could just be like, it's almost like, well, this is a bad situation, but the universe has given me this, so everything happens for a reason. It's like, well, does it? Like, should you look for something else? It's good to find the silver lining, but at the same time, like, there's something to be said for scrapping the plan that's not working and going with a different one.
And it's not necessarily just a silver lining.
Hmm.
It's finding why something happened. One of the things in my current job that I'm very good at doing, which people ask me to do, is to look at a situation, like research all of the communication, which is my first skill, and assess where things went wrong, and then
Yeah.
find why, like, so find out why something went badly, you
Right.
know. And that way it's like I can find a takeaway from it, and so I can find a reason, and then I would move myself to figure out what the person did and what they should not do for next time.
Right. And you mean that referencing that in relation to the everything happens for a reason, as in like the failure happened for a reason, and what is that reason, and trying to break that down.
Right.
Am I reading that correctly? Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So like it basically says that like a person with the connectedness strength has a faith that everything kind of has a link to something or something else. So
Right.
in the world there are, it's like I'm trained not to believe in coincidence. If I find especially, like especially in the workplace, if you find that something has been done, there's got to be a cause or a kind of like what like a reasoning behind it. It also works if I see somebody is upset about something, I can find why they'd be upset. Like why they specifically would feel that they have a right to be upset at us. You know.
I feel like some of those might be like, I'm reading the connectedness thing here, and it looks like that one is actually a spiritual one. It's referring to specifically to um, like us all being part of the same consciousness and a spirit or life force. We are not isolated from one another and or from the earth and life on it. We're connected in that way to everything. So I think maybe some of those that you're referring to in terms of like process breakdown might be more like the strategic one that you were talking about before. Perspective allows you to see patterns where some sees complexity. So what if this happened? What if that happened? So you're able to break things down into component pieces. I think I always get mixed up between, I have strategic and analytical in my top five.
We
Um,
both have strategic in common.
yeah,
I think strategic was my third skill.
four for me. Third one for like second one was individualization. So
what is individualization for you?
it leads you to be intrigued by the unique qualities of each person. You're impatient with generalizations or types, like all men do this or women do that. Like it's stupid. Like each individual in any group is so different. So instead, you focus on the differences. Instinctively observe each person's style, motivation, how each thinks. So with a like possible business, I guess. Application of just recognizing the value of having teams of diverse individuals, like we were talking about before. Um, like there's definitely a problem with hiring managers hiring themselves,
Mm-hmm.
uh, which is a significant problem. I would do the opposite. Like you don't hire another person, like you hire other people to complement your weaknesses,
Right.
not to double up on your strengths. It's not useful.
For the strategic strength shows it's people who are especially talented to create alternate ways to proceed.
Yeah,
Faced with any given scenario, they can quickly spot relevant patterns and issues. And the strategy does sort of play to the connectedness. I think that a lot of, and the thing is that maybe I'm looking at this from too professional away. Like, I mean, I don't think this is necessarily just related to the workplace. I think
yeah,
that
for sure.
I think that the way that I answered them almost defaulted to a more professional context, because a job is usually where one applies strengths and weaknesses in a way, like especially if you're concentrating on getting a job done and not necessarily on your own individuality, for example.
For sure, we're spending most of our time there, anyways, and also just the tasks that we have, or just the situations we come into. Unless you're doing like escape rooms with friends all the time, like there's just not that opportunity to find out that like, oh, I'm really good at leading, or I'm really good at this or that. It just doesn't come up. It's just conversation a lot of the time.
Right.
So yeah, no, that makes sense. I think I looked at it very similarly. I guess that also depends on like there's people who are themselves like the same person when they're at work or not at work, and then there's other people where it's compartmentalized.
Yeah.
So it would, I guess, depend on like if you viewed it that way, um, then how you answer the questions would matter because it's your persona there that's answering the questions almost.
We have a guest.
Oh, hello.
This is Faye. Hello, Faye. Okay.
I think the one that stood out for me the most in terms of like for multiple reasons was the ideation one. First of all, being number one, and second, I guess just putting into words something that I wouldn't have been able to on my own. And I think that that's part of the value of this process is that like for those of us who aren't great at putting certain things into words. Like I'm good with in some areas, and in other areas it's just like a blind spot. I'm just not able to do it. And this one is one of them because like when you think of like okay, I want you to list your strengths: attention to detail. I'm a leader. I'm of this. I'm of that. I can throw a ball well. Like whatever your strengths are. So I thought there was a lot of value in them articulating this for me. And it's not just the coming up with ideas, but it's also the enjoyment of whatever most people would have come up with. I want to do the opposite. I want to look at it from the opposite direction. It's why I like philosophy. It's why I like certain video games where you can kind of tweak the system. Like, okay, how do I break this? How do I look at it from a different angle and try it in a way that they didn't intend?
Right.
And so it means that you butt head a lot. So this again comes back to that conversation we were having earlier, where you get this advice to do X, Y, and Z, but I don't want to do what everybody else is doing. Like I think there's value in not doing what everybody else is doing, and it's easier, but I don't want to. It's I have an aversion to it. So it's like the sentence here: "You revel in taking the world we all know and turning it around so we can view it from a strange but strangely enlightening angle." Like I genuinely enjoy that. That's not like me reading into something and going like, "Oh, I have all these symptoms" or whatever it is. It's like, no, I genuinely do that.
Right.
So I guess this also, if I could just for a second, kind of highlight segues into some of the I guess supplemental either material or YouTube videos or whatever that you can find on this stuff, because they kind of dig into not just like what does this mean in terms of like, well, what is the actual definition of this as a strength, but it's what does it mean in terms of, how can you energize yourself. So people who are ideation people, so one of the hosts of the show said that his wife will come to him and be like, I need 5 ideas for a show that we're going to do next week, or I need 5 dinners that we can do in the next 2. Like, she'll give him tasks to do, and he just will drop what he's doing and immediately start doing that.
Right.
And so it's ways to energize your mind based on like what these things that you enjoy are. Especially in times like this where we might find ourselves depleted, you don't always know why. Like there's obvious things like maybe just not seeing people very often, but there's like more subtle things. Like at work, maybe I used to have jobs where like you would be doing your own work, but people would constantly be like, "Why is this not working?" Like, what did you just say? Like, and you walk over and try to help them with it, and those little things you don't pick up on necessarily as being like, oh, that's why I had a good day. There was tons of those things. All you know is when they're gone, it's like, well, I don't feel right. Like I don't know what this is. Like this job didn't really change, but maybe that component of it, the people that are around you, no longer have those issues, or you were moved to a new area or something like that.
Right.
So it's the ability to kind of pinpoint all these little things that might have lasting or a big impact on how you feel. I think is significant.
Ideation was almost in the top five for me. It was a seven.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. So people who are especially talented in the ideation theme are fascinated by ideas.
Hmm.
They're able to find connections between seemingly disparate phenomena. So there it is. Number seven, ideation. Number six, just out of the top five, I had activator. People who are especially talented in the activator theme can make things happen by turning thoughts into action. They are often impatient. I have a bit of impatience, but that usually ends up sort of being spurned on by some sort of negative stimulus. So if something is wrong, if I've engaged my brain to sort of figure out what was wrong, then I'll usually quickly enact something to make it right.
Right. Yeah. It's almost like one of those things where, and I know we've talked about this before, where it's like the negative side to something. Like it's
Right.
you want to make things happen. You're impatient. You're a leader. You're bossy. Like there's a negative way of looking at it. It sounds like if I feel like impatient is can be one of those things. Like, oh, I want to get this. We need to fix this now. Like, is that being impatient or is that being decisive uh,
It's
in
both.
solving a problem? Like, it's like you can look at anything in a negative way if you want, but I think we do that maybe a bit too much, or we don't do that evenly enough. But that's a whole separate topic.
I've
Yeah,
once.
that's in the executing section, right? Like I'm looking at the overview, executing, sorry, not executing, but it's because I'm thinking of executive function. But like
Mhm.
that section is my lowest. Though that one in relationship building, not too high for me.
That's right.
Um,
Screw the relation. Screw the
yeah,
relationships. I just want ideas.
yeah. One of like so that was one of the idea like the subjects that I really enjoyed about this was reading not just the top ones, but what the bottom ones were. It's like this it was almost like cathartic to like, okay, thank you. Like there's obviously whatever mix you have, there's going to be ones that you're strongest at, and there's going to be ones where you're the least strong at. You can call them weaknesses, you can call them just like if somebody needs to do this and we only have a limited amount of time, then it should be the person who's best at it, not me. Which made it interesting based on like just the types of things that are on that list. Like the very last, there's 30. Is it 34? Like 32 is positivity, and anybody who knows that that's approximately where positivity should be. Generous with praise, quick to smile, always on the lookout on the pot for the positive in a situation. Absolutely not. Some call you lighthearted. No, no, and
You're
that's fine. Like
you,
it's just the fact that it can be fine. It's okay that that's not what you're bringing to the table because I'm bringing other shit to the table. You bring that. Yeah, all of these, it's. I feel like there's value in knowing what's at the bottom because, like, depending on where you're falling in terms of like how you feel about your own strengths and weaknesses, like some people get a bit too high on themselves and start like, oh, I'm good at all these amazing things. Like, well, are you? Like, maybe what you're not good at is recognizing what you're not good at. Like one of the things.
Yeah.
So it's good to see these things at the bottom to know that, like, okay, well, I have to source that elsewhere, and that's okay. That doesn't make me stupid, and that doesn't make them amazing. Like it's just, and vice versa. Somebody might suck at the things that I'm amazing at. That doesn't make them. There's a flaw in that.
In my rank order, from like basically from all the way down to the bottom, the my least, my number 34 least strong skill or strength was deliberative. People who are especially talented in the deliberative theme are best described by the serious care they take in making decisions or choices. They anticipate the obstacles.
Yeah, it's like your job requires that you not do that. Like you don't have time. You don't have time to like, okay, I need to this to be the absolute perfect thing to do. Let's take as long as we need. Like, no, you need to fix this absolutely right now. Like there's no, and there's a time and place for both, and I'm sure each person frustrates the other. You know, from one perspective, it looks like you're jumping to conclusions, or it looks like you're not taking the full weight of the situation into consideration. But then there's other people where it's like, listen, we need to make a decision now, and you're acting like you have forever. We don't. We don't have unlimited time.
Right.
So it's a time and place for both.
Second to last for me was competition. People who are especially talented in the competition theme measure their progress against the performance of others. They strive
Mine's
to
super
win.
low there too.
Yeah, they strive to win first place and revel in contests. 32, so like the third least, was harmony. People who are especially talented in the harmony theme look for consensus. They don't enjoy conflict. Rather, they seek areas of agreement. It's funny because like I work in a customer service job with very demanding customers, so I end up finding harmony, but it's usually based on avoiding conflict and just giving them what they want.
Yeah,
So
and out of necessity, like this, all of these things. I feel like there's sometimes when they make generalizations or personality type things, it's like, you know, you're just going to speak your mind in whatever circumstance. Like, no, I will want to, but I'm not stupid. I
yeah,
know that I'm talking to some upper manager who doesn't take kindly to that type of thing, I'll just keep my mouth shut and think horrible things about them on my own. Like I'm not going to say them out loud. So harmony is my last one. That's my
oh,
lowest.
nice. So we do see eye to eye on certain things, at
Yeah, yeah.
least in terms of this test. Significance was my fourth least, which is people who are talented and significance theme want to be very important in the eyes of others. They are independent and want to be recognized.
Yeah, that's 28 for me. Yeah, don't care at all.
Yeah. And rounding out the bottom five, I have includer. People who are especially talented in the includer theme are accepting of others. They show awareness of those who feel left out and make an effort to include them.
I'm 22 on that one. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I think that, especially the way that the test questions sort of play out, I think they do randomize the statements that you say are I'm extremely in agreement or disagreement with this one versus the other one.
Yeah.
I think that in a lot of cases, if I'm remembering the test questions properly, in a lot of cases where I was wanting to be liked or to make sure that people felt included, I'm more focused on the task at hand, and as much as possible I left emotion and that kind of element out of it.
Okay.
Yeah, so like and I think that sort of speaks. I'm a very practical person in terms of the way that I conduct business and the way that I conduct myself. I will usually find a practical solution. My reactions are almost always based in solving a problem. I rarely bring up something emotional. I'm not that attuned with what other people are going to react with. I don't try to include people's emotions into a decision because I find that that's counterproductive. That's probably the way that I conduct myself in general. Some people are a lot more emotionally intelligent. I know that though these skills are important to a lot of other people. especially if you're working in a sector that requires a lot of sensitivity and emotional intelligence. Like, I mean, I probably would struggle with being like some sort of care counselor of some kind
Yeah,
because
likewise. Yeah,
I'd be good. I'd be good for support of, like what I do currently is, supporting essentially machines. But if I were supporting other people, then I know that that's a different kind of machine. So, like,
yeah,
I guess I know how to speak to the people that work on the machines because I know that they're not calling me with their emotions. And when they are, it's usually a very rash sort of reaction that I'm trying to tamper down. And when I'm
hmm
tampering those down, I mean, I'm not going to be able to make that person happy. I'm just going to have to try to essentially diffuse it.
yeah,
So even that, it becomes a practical consideration. Because you're right, looking at the bottom does sort of make you reflect on the way that you are and why those things would matter, really.
yeah. It really I feel like it can like greatly inform, but it can directionally help you. There's people like this. It's more nuanced. Is the all these ideas are breaking down into smaller pieces than we're led to believe. I think when we're in school, like,
Yeah,
oh, you're good at math, you're good at art. Like, no, 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 those aren't. No, you're good at these things. Like your math could be like problem solving here, but over here it's like a following a formula. And so maybe you like this aspect and not that aspect. There's all kinds of like nuances to these things that I think that we gloss over. So it's important to know these things about yourself as early as possible so that you can kind of pick and choose like, well, I'm looking for where to steer my career and I know that I get bored doing these things and this helped me to kind of realize, yeah, that is something that's annoying to me or that I'm just not capable of doing. So maybe I need to kind of make sure that I'm looking for stuff that doesn't emphasize that aspect.
right. Assessing one's own strengths and weaknesses is important because you actually are able to learn a little bit about yourself, learn a little bit about the way that you might come off to others, and learn a little
hmm
bit about what you're doing and versus what you maybe should be doing. The top five skills that I had were kind of like they weren't surprises. Like all the
Right.
communication, the connectedness, like strategic learner and input, and all of that sort of spoke to the way that I am. You know,
hmm
even outside of the workplace, and maybe the workplace is the place where you spend often the most time. So that's the way you end up sort of approaching things like this. Because the way that I make music, for example, like I'm I'm a creative and improvisational person, and I'm pretty good to sort of like play along with others. So it's funny the idea of harmony and stuff ends up being toward the bottom, but I think that's more of a human aspect of the concept of harmony. It's not the harmony in the sense of where things are where everyone's emotions are like this. It's more like harmony in terms of music, in terms of creation, in terms of the vibe. All of these things, communication, connectedness, like it kind of speaks to the very practical side of me. It's funny. It doesn't really speak much to the creative in me, which I find funny.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is interesting. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because like even like I'm looking at the learning skill. Like I'm looking here at the like for learner, like learning is there, but more of like I'm learning what I want to improve. Like so it's more based on like just developing skills, like developing some kind of language, like it's like I'm teaching myself the way things work. And like with all of the musical gear and all the tech gear that I use, I mean, I can understand that too, but it's just more like I don't know exactly. I don't know exactly what that speaks to me as a creative person because I really do like to create and stuff, but necessarily it's not necessarily something that jumps out at the strength side of thing.
Yeah, I wonder how that actually comes to bear because there isn't one specifically, I guess, relating to creating or to creativity. And it could be that this is like the goal of this was to focus on the work aspect, but like even then there's maybe creativity has become one of those like catch-alls that isn't a thing on its own. It's a like you might be creative mechanically, you might be
Hmm.
creative conceptually, you might be creative linguistically. I don't know. So maybe it's just it's broken down into these pieces, and you're going to find them within these categories as opposed to its own thing. Um, and then the need would be to look at it as like within using that lens,
Hmm.
which of these actually applies to that, or it could just be that it's just flawed and it wasn't able to pick up on that about you, because that many questions about an individual who's like we're complex people, right? Like you're going to try to get that from this many questions is just unrealistic.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's grain of salt. I feel like it's important on these things too.
Yeah.
They catch a lot of flack, I think, for not fully, um, I guess, recognizing all of our complexities and all that stuff. But it's like I think there's value in just looking at it as for again directionally. Like it doesn't have to be the perfect solution for it to be a useful input.
True. Yeah. Okay. So we'll end here, and thank you very much, Mark,
Thank you.
for doing all this stuff with me. So,
I appreciate it. Thanks for
yeah.
doing that afterwards as well.
Yeah. No problem.